going on, I want to preface it by saying one thing that I found out this year. Pay close attention to your textbooks. Make sure you tell your team and your cohorts at your campus to pay close attention. Fourth grade, I borrowed their assessment and they had a volume measurement in the science as a quick assessment as measuring a cube in fourth grade in the science. So that's just my little soapbox of you gotta stay on top of it. What we found with our year at a glance, we used the 9-week system because we are on a 9-week schedule. All right, math tees. I gotta remember not to do a hard
Would you
press on
repeat what you said about pay attention to the textbook again, please?
Yes, ma'am. All right. Paying close attention to the textbooks, and you also try to pay attention to your lower grade levels. It's a big deal with elementary 5th grade because we're the lowest one in this classroom. But 4th grade, with the adoption that we have, and it's a good adoption, I was on that committee, it had a lot of things that we liked, but there are flaws in everything. In 4th grade quick assessment, we had the 5-question quick assessments, and it had 4th graders in science measuring the volume of a cube, doing length times width times height as a science, as part of their science. But that doesn't come until much later. So, and I pulled the 4th grade teacher aside and I said, listen, you shouldn't do this because we don't even do that in 5th grade. Please don't. So, be careful, be aware, just kind of keep your eyes out, things will jump out at you.
It's a math tick. What?
Length times width times height, but it's not something we do in 5th grade science though. The volume of a cube and.
You do it in math.
Right, but this is, it's not a science book. It was in a science text. Because whenever we say volume, it's weird. It's something that you need to have a discussion vertically.
I mean, if you want to pull it out of science and do it in math, that's fine. But in science, you shouldn't be using science time to teach that specific.
Right.
Yeah. And volume,
Well, I was gonna say, Jennifer actually had a worse one, if you would. I mean, I don't think that's so bad. Hers was really bad.
photosynthesis in the 5th grade textbook.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well,
Chemical
what about,
equation of
what about
photosynthesis.
acceleration?
Yeah.
Acceleration, which is 8th grade teach, was in her 5th grade science book.
We had
Fifth
the
grade
discussion of atomic particles, atoms.
Yeah, in our 5th grade science book. And if you're not paying attention to your teaks and you're using your textbook as your guide,
No.
you're gonna teach that, and you're gonna really confuse the kids, and you're gonna waste your time, because there, nowhere in our teaks does it say
Right.
to do this, and our textbooks say they're aligned.
The other thing that we've started looking at are the national standards compare, and if you look at the national standards, they will, in the misconceptions and the research behind it, is the ability, the cognitive ability to understand these more and more abstract ideas. So they are not recommending atoms or molecules until at grade 6.
Can I clarify about the math teacher?
Oh, yes, please.
It says to use concrete object pictorial models to develop the formulas.
Right.
To develop the formula. So if you skip that step and you just go straight to the formula, I'm gonna come back and haunt every one of you.
What does it say in 4th grade?
4th grade.
Does it say to use length, width, and height? Dr. Browning over
To
there.
develop that formula, yes it does, length, width, height, or side, cube, or
Right.
capital B, H. Got all three.
So it makes
in
them
fifth
do all 3.
In 5th grade, yes.
Yeah, but you use like your base 10 blocks and it's easier, and they do irregular
Right.
shapes, so it's easier to do developmentally. We don't just start with length times width times height.
You have to build it.
Well,
Right.
You have to develop
Like
the
how many-
formula.
Yeah.
You have to lay that bottom layer, and then how many many layers, to make the height. To get
What-
the area of that bottom layer and then the height.
That was a mistake I made this year. I didn't teach area times height, and that confused them.
Well, remember the streamlining means reduce.
Mhm.
And so if
Reduce what?
the ticks, I don't know that it means reduce the ticks number, the number of the ticks. It's just the political climate says reduce the ticks. And in some cases, it may be easier, as we've already discussed, instead of calculate density, you don't need it all the way through senior in high school. So there's no need for them to learn how to calculate density. However, I would say that would be nice in whatever level it is for math. That'd be a great math example to use. But we don't need to use instructional time, which I think is kind of what Jen was talking about,
Right.
to teach something that science doesn't need to be taught all the way through.
Well, and they still need to get that concept. I mean, up until 5th grade, they've only got, will it sink or will it float in water? By the time they get to 5th grade, now they've got to add other objects to it,
It's only
different forms
relative
of
though.
matter.
They don't need
And so-
to calculate it.
Right, they don't need to calculate it, they just
Ever.
need to know, well, this sinks here, but it floats there, like we did with the density car. It's a slippery slope, I saw that and it worried me. Once you get
So-
going on it.
It's like
it
the
can get
more you
complicated.
think about it, the more you find problems or things to think about, you know?
Right,
I mean,
and
and
keep going.
we don't have enough time to really sit and think deeply about it, so we just kind of skim it and, go with it. I mean, but that, it's so important to really have that in your mind when you're looking at your text.
And the interpretation of them too, because we had the big discussion back here, we've been doing lots of deep thinking back here, that the TEKS actually say the student is expected to.
Right.
And so typically, Donna and Jennifer are saying a couple things. First of all, I'll put we because I'm a teacher too, we skip the part the student is expected to, and if it says demonstrate and model, the teacher thinks, okay, I'm gonna demonstrate and model, so the
They're gonna
students will learn. Or even worse, just look at the academic vocabulary and not really read the text to see what it says, the cognitive level. So I think there's a lot of things that we have to be alert to if we want students to learn what they need to learn and they're able to learn.
Well, in taking a lot of the information that we have back to your campus, and working with some of them, because these are changing, and they need to understand, energy pyramid, I had awesome ideas and everything about the energy pyramid, and it'll still show up in some of your new materials. Nowhere, but I'm talking 5th grade position, it's not there. And the primaries, secondary, tertiary, all of that. It's like, don't even use those words, because then that adds on to other things that they have to know. They need to know the TEKS for their grade level.
Yeah, that was,
Make sure they get it inside and out, concept upside, downside, backwards and forwards.
so did we even decided that omnivore,
Herbivore, omnivore, and carnivore are not in the 5th grade
it's
TEKS.
producer consumer.
But we couldn't find them anywhere. It took a lot of digging, and they're in different
Found it?
places.
Yeah, like we're
Kind of.
yeah.
It is, so, and decomposers.
Okay, let's let Toby make a comment and we go back to
Yes,
the
sorry.
horizontal alignment.
In what grade level, if math is used for finding volume, in what level do they use for water displacement? When is it introduced? Middle school?
Milliliters?
No, I'm
No,
talking about
water
water
They don't
displacement.
find volume by displacement.
Toby, you're talking about math?
It could be either in math, does math use it as,
Math doesn't use it.
It's a science still.
We don't use water
And you
displacement.
should know where water displacement
well, I
is in
know,
science.
but I'm just wondering if there's some mention of it. Okay,
It's 4th grade.
but math did not
You're
use
talking
that.
about a strategy, and TEKS are content and processes, they're not strategy. So I think it goes back to the example I said earlier. I think calculating density would be a nice math problem, whatever grade level it ends up being, I've forgotten what we said.
Yeah.
but it's a strategy, it's just an example, it's like another activity
Right.
that we would talk about in science.
Well, and reason why I was saying just water displacement for volume. You know, just to show students, you know, here's this cube, and it
They don't
says,
think about volume the way we do in science. That's part of this,
Okay.
what the conversation is about is to wrestle with things like Browning and I do with a lot of stuff. And like last night, she was trying to explain the math text, and I said, what does that mean? Because we were looking at 7.4A.
Yes.
7.4A. And I said, well, that's in math. I said, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? So once she explained it to me, I said, oh, yeah, that's how we use that in science.
Right.
And that's at certain grade levels. So,
Okay.
and it took her probably 15 minutes, because I'm a little bit sometimes. More. Pardon?
so I see that as a leading or supporting teaching math for science later on possibly. For length times width times height and water displacement.
We would
Showing the
not-
volume.
we
No,
would-
but
We don't have the time to spend on water displacement.
no, I understand that, I understand, but to me, it's supporting later on, it's just the students don't see it yet. You know, it's one of these, don't worry, you know, if they ask you, well, what's this good for? Why do I need to find the volume? Well, that'll be covered later, just not now, you know? It is-
Okay, we gotta get off
Okay,
this. Can
so-
you say it in one sentence?
I teach the standards, but I extend to the level of my students' curiosity. One sentence.
Okay? Somebody else was over here. Had one, raise your hand
I'm
up. Okay, go ahead.
mistaken. I can't find the TEK that says use displacement, but there are
It doesn't.
displacement questions on the STAR test.
Right.
I think it's a.
They
On
measure
fifth grade
volume.
STAR
They
test,
measure
measuring
volume.
volume and displacement on the fifth
By-
grade STAR test. Seen that.
Okay, that's another if you'll write that down, Jennifer, we'll get back and wrestle with that. So,
Okay,
go ahead with
so
your vertical,
that's-
your
sorry.
horizontal alignment for us.
The problems that we found to start with, and if I push buttons on there, I make something mess up. In math, 5.9A, represent categorical data. This is week 20 to 21, I think it was. We got chunked. But in science, 5.2G, it's analyze, interpret, directed and indirectly evidence reasonable and reasonable explanations. That's the first beginning of school. So what you would need to do with that is go back to the 4th grade math TEKS. I guess it would be 5.9. And you would have to do it on what you do in science on the level bar graphs, things like bar graphs, data tables, things that they've done in 4th grade. Yes,
Isn't that a processing standard?
For science.
for
For
science,
science?
yes.
So technically, that's something you do all year, you wouldn't necessarily have to do it at that time.
Right, but it's, we introduce it, we get it going. We get it going immediately, we start with it. And a lot of times, you know, you do the whole reteach. But you would not start with 5th grade, this level. You would have to base it upon what they should know from their math in 4th grade. So that's the
Well,
other.
wait a minute,
Sorry.
where is the math in analyzing, interpreting, directed?
Direct and indirect.
Indirect and indirect
Bar
evidence, is that what that
graph.
says, direct
Right.
and indirect evidence?
When they're in 4th grade,
Uh-huh.
they create the graphs, but they're not actually getting data off of it. When they're in 5th grade, we're showing them that you're reading this question and it's asking you specific to read the graph and get the data from it to answer it. They're not doing that in 4th grade. 4th grade, they can put the data on there, but interpreting it isn't there yet. So in 5th grade, we're doing that later in the year. We're analyzing.
Yeah, that's the end of the 5th grade year.
Yeah,
Fifth
But, I
grade
mean-
science,
Math.
5th grade math.
Right.
So you're saying that
like
science would
April.
have difficulty using that skill because it hadn't been taught in math
If
yet
they're
for them
creating
to read
it, yes,
graphs?
but if it's reading it, then yes, they're going to, because.
They would have trouble reading
Yes.
graphs. That's all I need to know.
Yes, ma'am, sorry.
Shorthand.
but as science, isn't that part of our job to teach them how to explain and analyze their data? if they're doing an experiment and they gather the data, that is our job to teach them how to, what does this data mean? What does it stand for? As it applies to your investigation, not necessarily a random graph, what's this mean?
Okay, but what I heard Brenda say is the reading of the graphs. You're talking about them creating their own graphs?
And then analyzing
Analyzing it.
To come to a conclusion?
to be able to come to conclusion from their
And
investigation.
that is different from, if they create their own graph and analyze it, that's different from reading somebody else's graph?
That's what I'm saying. But I see it as, that's my job to teach them how to analyze the data that they collect while they're doing
No,
their
I got
science
that part, but I'm
investigation.
trying to say, y'all are thinking it's
I'm saying
specific
in
to-
math,
that reading
well-
someone else's graph is different from their creating their own and being able to analyze it or
that's how I
read
see it, yes.
Melissa, let me repeat what you said. This is what I think you're trying to establish. By the time they get in fourth grade, they should be able to read a graph. How many nights did, or what's the favorite color of the fourth grade class? That's fourth grade. But coming to a conclusion, in math, that's not till later in fifth grade. But in science, being able to take data, evidence, analyze it, interpret, and come to a conclusion, that's something we're always and constantly doing.
We
Now
start,
he's doing
yeah,
it in a fourth grade.
that's,
Right,
For
it's a
science.
processing skill. In order to go through the process, scientific thinking, they have to be able to do this from the beginning.
Okay, so maybe the practical application is that science should not ask students to read graphs until it's taught in fifth grade?
Well, they can read graphs, but coming to a conclusion based on the information of the graph, I think we're saying there's a difference between.
I'm saying that if that's the case, then you say you do an experiment, an actual experiment, because that's when you have the whole data and everything.
No, investigation, we have data.
Okay, investigation or experiment, whichever. So you go through and you're saying that you can do the experiment or investigation and you get the data. And then once I have that data, because math doesn't teach me how to read the graphs, they can use that to make a graph. But then I gotta wait to do a conclusion until week 22, because that's when they're teaching how to read that graph. To me, that's our job as a science teacher, is this is your data, how do you, what does that mean?
I don't see the significance between the levels. I don't understand the difference between creating your own graph and doing the analysis of it and being able to read it and come to some kind of conclusion. I don't see that that's any different than reading a graph.
it's the complexity of the questions that are asked in fourth grade. It
We
jumps
don't
up.
have STAR?
Just in general,
Oh,
like, in STAR, in just like what they're expected to be able to do in fourth grade, the complexity's rather low, but what I ran into was, because I didn't know that, I didn't know the fourth grade TEKS, we did a bubble experiment, and I said, let's analyze the data and see which bubble solution is the best. They could not compare data, like mentally process it. There was a lot of scaffolding that took place. It took a few experiments before I could make them look at increase, decrease, comparing trends, that type of stuff, that they could draw some sort of like conclusion that would, their evidence supported their theory, their hypothesis. So it just takes scaffolding, and I don't think we can wait till the end of the year, or they're not gonna do well on their fifth grade STAR science test, because there's a lot of reading graphs. Now, what do you think about this, and what do you think will happen here? They go from just reading to get basic information and maybe small comparisons to drawing conclusions from data tables.
Okay. Tanya?
Well, looking at fourth grade TEKS, it comes up in 4.9B, which if you follow TRS, you're doing that the 4 to 9 weeks. So right when you leave at fourth grade, you're learning to represent data on a frequency table, dot plot, or stem and leaf plot with whole numbers and fractions, and solve 1 and 2 step problems using data in whole number, decimal, and fraction form in frequency table, dot plot, or stem and leaf plot. we had a conversation a couple of years ago about the line graphs. And I know that in science, we use those every once in a while. I still don't know where they are.
We're actually gonna have a session on graphing.
Okay. But it happens at the end of fourth grade.
Yeah.
So when they come into fifth grade, they should be able to experience that.
But the fact that it comes at the end of fourth grade,
Yeah.
everybody knows that after STAR testing, the STAR testing takes over the last line.
That's an administrative problem.
Well,
And,
Actually-
and it is a level of teacher decision-making. So I think do you go with the lowest quality denominator when you make a decision, or do you base it on what your standards are? So if we can't assume that a standard's gonna be taught in if fifth grade can't assume a standard's gonna be taught in fourth grade, then that's a big issue, and it's at an administrative level. Not just a teacher level, it's an administrative level. And that's what we talk to your principals about too. And you should talk to your principals, and there should be that vertical alignment that we spoke about. So, let's hold that and let's come back to it, because this is not a new question.
can I just
Right.
finish one thing?
Okay.
Okay, so when you move into fifth grade, and I had this issue last year when we did our alignment, I had that up there. The difference is, when you move into fifth grade, you are now, using bar graphs, and you're using measurements, and you're doing discrete paired data on a scatter plot. So that's what's added into there. So the basic doing a graph is okay. Reading of the graph is okay. They should, if they got what they were supposed to in fourth grade, they should be able to do the basics. When you get into the discrete data and the different things like that, that's where you need to figure out, are you gonna move your math forward, or are you gonna,
So
You
what I'm,
actually have a chart on graphs in case you don't know it in your notebooks. In your best
so what I'm
practices.
interpreting you saying is you have to be careful what
what
graphs
type
you
of graphs
use.
you introduce in the beginning.
So don't start out the years, because bar graphs are my favorite thing in the whole wide world, but it's not.
They should be able to go in and do a bar graph.
So is bar
Well,
graph
but scatter plots and all
Continuous
that,
data
it's
or
something
continuous
that they've learned in fourth grade, so that may start with what they know.
Scatter plots. No, not scatter plots.
Oh,
Scatterplots is fifth.
That's fifth.
okay.
So in the beginning,
But start with what they should know from fourth grade
or
and
move your
interpret that.
graphing,
I think if you look
Up to
at
the
the
beginning.
black poster over there, what's that second line say?
No,
Known to unknown.
Okay, principles. All right,
Okay,
so
thank you.
do you see any other problems?
Just
alignment?
kinda with that, I think we had, if I can solve my manipulation skills. Again, with the data, that discorrelation, we work with data immediately. We just need to be careful about the forms of the data, because they don't get to it till later. Let's see. And the rest of my team, if I screw something up, please feel free to.
Oh, there you go.
I think is that it?
See, in my mind, for science, our processes are K-12. It's context dependent, which are your TEKS, your content TEKS. So I don't see a problem in my mind in science processes. I think there is, though, with math, and that's why you have to have that conversation. So what else do you have there?
The other big thing is metric. Metric measurement isn't not introduced until week 19. Again, it's something we always use metric.
So does, I don't know the fourth grade TEKS, do they have, is it explicit to use metric in fourth grade for science? Not what we always do, but is it in your TEKS? That's the question. Yes?
Fourth grade metrics, you only hit like the very basics of
No.
metrics.
Is it in fourth grade?
And using the metrics.
Okay. And is that the beginning of using metric? Okay.
Is it the same in math? Do you use metric in math too in
It
fourth
carries
grade?
over.
No, it's
I
third
believe
grade.
it- I think it's,
Okay.
yeah,
And
like,
it's not in second grade.
yeah, I think they're like
So-
introduced into it in third grade, and then by fourth grade, we do like basic conversions of it. And I don't know about fifth.
Non-standard.
So metric,
And it's
metric is
basically
in
like-
third grade math, is that
No,
correct?
science, this is science.
And science.
Metric used in third grade science, so somebody needs to look up where metric is in math.
Fourth grade.
And I didn't think we had conversions anymore.
It's in fourth grade.
Double check.
Fourth grade what? Math,
Math.
science
Fourth grade math.
is what?
They
Metric?
use metric.
So fourth grade
grade
science and fourth grade math
Third
have
grade.
third grade science. Fourth grade math using metric.
I remember doing it in
Relative
third grade, I
sizes,
used
measure-
No, what you did.
Measurements,
Just what the teacher said.
convert
Convert
measurements in the same measurement
Customary or
systems.
metric?
In third grade.
So if that's a misalignment, then you guys better be talking to each other for third and fourth grade to see if there's language that needs to be used or methods, that need to be used.
I think one of the issues too, and I've seen this and I've been guilty of it myself at times, with the math, and it can happen in the science too, but what I've seen in the math is, okay, I'm teaching this too, I'm done with it, now I'm teaching this, and it's like, well, metric doesn't show up till here, so I'm never, ever, ever gonna say the word meter or liter or whatever until week 19.
And the YAG shows metric at the beginning of only weeks 1 through 4
Science.
in science.
Well, that's specific.
But it's a processing skills, you review it, you teach it,
But are they teaching, they're teaching, does the YAG show that only process skills are taught at the beginning?
No, it shows it in every
The
single
whole-
Right.
the whole way through.
but this is where it's the target of the unit.
Measurements.
It's the first introduction.
Right.
Okay, but does that mean it is taught separately without content was my
No.
question? For
Well, for
fifth
seventh grade, no.
Okay, but for fifth grade?
It's first grade.
What is third grade?
If I remember,
Using
I
metric.
think it's mainly,
In math.
What is the,
Oh, okay.
in math, so
And-
they
and
have it.
science.
Yeah, I mean,
What
it's,
grade?
Okay, so we've got metric at some level beginning at math, third
and it's
grade.
using volume, measuring volume,
Are those
and
the new teachers or the old
volume
teachers?
is.
these are the new.
Yeah, that's what y'all have as a new one.
Yes,
All you have to do is look at like 3.1, is it a process standard?
When to use.
Look at 3.1, any of the ones, and see if it's a process standard.
Hold on, yes, it is.
Okay, the process standard is
yeah, it's 2014.
Okay, so it appears that math will be using metric before science does, but there still needs to be that conversation because it's different levels of
Right.
scaffolding, if you would, into the metric.
So I would say, more than anything, where you see these huge this is what we saw that just blared out at us, is go back, 'cause you need to know your teaks above and below. Not vertically, not just horizontally, you need to know them vertically. And have the conversation with say, hey, I'm doing this, and we're going to be I'm going to be introducing the concept of boiling and freezing. In fifth grade science, we use Celsius. How did it go for you with your fourth graders last year? How did you teach? Did you teach temperature and metric? And if anything, by having a conversation with your fourth grade, your lower grade level teacher, which would be fourth grade for us, two things happen. You get to know what they taught, and then it also puts the thought in their mind, oh, well, that's what they're going, that's where they need to be able to go, what's up ahead.
So the bottom line is, we need to know horizontally, above and below us, probably more than one grade
We
level.
need to know vertically, we need our X and our Y.
Okay, question?
Yes, I have a question about the
Yes.
that. It's not for you necessarily. On that last column it says, weak science should be taught.
Yes.
that's confusing to me. Do you want us to put in there when we should teach it? Or
our
when,
district-
or when it says it's taught? Like, what do you wanna have in there?
Okay, listen to the answer. Okay, the question was on the chart, it has a column that says, when should science be taught? What have we said? Science should be taught
After the math.
after they learn the math skills, so it doesn't matter what your scope and sequence
Then
is.
her entire column is wrong. Because those come before the math on her chart. That's what was throwing me off, and so I asked her that.
Yes,
Okay.
okay, thank you. So in other words, this should be the ideal scope and sequence or YAG
So
for
you should
science.
change your, we were
After.
taking this up, we were finding all the ones where we found discrepancies, and it wasn't happening the way it was supposed to, and that was what we were pointing out.
Okay,
Because if it was already happening the way it was supposed to, then we were like, what's the point of putting it up there?
yes, so,
Or two
so you
columns.
have identified
Yes,
possibly
yes.
with metric, and that was the only one?
Solving these systems of equations.
Well, obviously, we talk after the math.
It wouldn't be a discrepancy. Well, then change the column heading,
Yeah, you can change the column heading.
you know?
Well, but you have to have the week it should be taught. So
But
maybe you add
Well,
a
then
second
maybe add a
column.
after that, like, it should be
Or you just say
after whatever the math class.
I don't know so much as we need to change, because the focus of our data was on the science processing skills. I don't think you can wait till the middle of the year to teach the processing skills. I think you need to be careful about the framework you use.
What does that mean, the framework?
You need to be careful and know, give myself some think time. You need to start with their known. You need to know what they know. And try not to do great big jump like with the graphs, a big pie graph or whatnot. Start, use the tools they have in their toolbox right now.
Well, it goes back to what we said earlier, when you're
Right.
planning instruction or you're planning a scope and sequence, it's always gonna be known to the unknown.
And like with the metric, how far did they get into the metric? They may not have gotten into temperature,
Okay,
so.
quick comment?
So what do you do when it comes to district assessments?
Hold on, guys, we have a question here.
When it comes to district assessments, and you know that you shouldn't have taught, or you shouldn't teach that particular teacher before, you have to wait till after they learn the math of it, and you know when. And so what do you do when it comes to the district assessments, that you have to be able to answer those questions?
Well, I would hope that she would do like Donna did with her conversation with her specialist on her campus when they were looking at their benchmark items, that it was not a TEKS it was the activity did not teach the TEKS. So that kind of conversation, if you see a problem, you should be having it this summer. Now, you're at a little bit of a disadvantage because you're at a new school, you don't know the climate, you don't know your colleagues, you don't know your boss. So you have to tread gently.
I mean, that has happened on our benchmarks before too. We've done a benchmark and they might have aligned math and, we might have done the science or whatever. It aligned, but we hadn't taught it yet it was already on the benchmark. So we're like, we do one in November?
I think that would be a good conversation after the first benchmarks, assessment, whatever they call it. And whenever if it crashes and burns, will have to sit down with somebody and they'll say, well, why do you think this happened? And that's where you
Can introduce that.
I wouldn't do it that way at all.
No?
I would be proactive, but you have to be careful about how
Right.
you're gonna be proactive. And you can blame it on the university. When I was at the university, we did analysis on this, and lo and behold, look what we found.
So we can blame you.
That's
Dr. West said, I'm gonna talk to you right now.
No.
So,
Not
but
Dr.
you
West.
see what I'm saying? You have to,
Oh, okay.
that's part of being a professional, is you begin conversations, and sometimes they're hard ones.
Yeah.
And you'll have sometimes administrative support, and sometimes you won't have it. But you have a responsibility to your students to do what's right. And so if you think that that's right, to alert them that this is a problem, then you must do that. and you do it in a professional way, and you do it in a way that is conducive with the particular environment that you're in. And you go through the chain of command. In my mind, the chain of command would be my principal. In some cases, it would be the department head, depending on how, the climate is, if you would, or the personality of the department head.
GLC.
A learning coach?
Yeah.
Somebody just starts, it should be a conversation
Dean.
started possibly at different levels. But you need to follow the chain of command, and if your chain of command says that I'd talk to other teachers about it first, and then I'd probably go to my department head and say, here's a problem I'm really concerned about with our kids. And then ask them, if it's a very controlling environment, ask them, so what can we do about this? And then they say, well, I'll take it to somebody in central office or whatever.
That's one thing that I know I appreciated looking at with the TRS, because when you do the year at a glance, and if you delve into the unit and open it up, it does give you, they need to know this, here are the misconceptions. It
like that.
does a lot of that for you ahead of time, so,
You take the time to read it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's very dense. I looked through them, and they have some good resources in there. A couple of things I was worried about. One was safety. They didn't have eye protection in some of the instances, but pretty much it was good. They only had experimental design. I don't think that's good because that's not telling you what to do with your teeth. But they are good resources, so dig into them. But verify, it's like, okay, y'all tell me, who said trust but verify? Was that Harry Truman? Reagan, Ronald Reagan, okay, President Reagan said trust but verify, and that's a good thing, a good habit to be in. What, in my class, we call it, what's the evidence for your answer? Ashley? Did we ask that question?
All the time.
All the time, that's right. And that's what you do in science. If you go to a scientific meeting with your research, that's what they're looking for. What is the evidence that you are providing for what you're saying? And if you don't have it, you just get skewered. Can we end this? You had one more last time.
That was last
It
time.
was good, but
I think that we should really go back to that side-by-side comparison that we did years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, because it brought up the fact that elapsed time is gone. Temperature is gone.
Be specific though, in where?
Yes,
In,
5th grade. Temperature is gone, elapsed time is gone, reading graphs, there's lots of things that are completely gone.
in
Which-
math?
In math.
Okay, see,
Which
I
was
thought you were
never-
talking about science, I'm thinking,
No.
oh, wait a minute.
No, but we had that conversation saying that's something that we're gonna have to make time in science so that we can, if we need to do something with temperature, we're gonna have to build that time into our science. So just knowing where these things
Yes,
were left
and it's
out.
already in the resource system.
Okay.
Well, and that's the other
Oh,
question.
No,
It's in the
I pulled
TEA
up some-
document?
Yes, I pulled
Good.
up those.
That's good that TEA's provided that. They haven't, there's no evidence they're gonna do that for the streamlined science.
But it's like with temperature, they have to start studying letters as early as kindergarten, as soon as the TEKS begin, which is in kindergarten. So can we, or should we, actually? First is can we, and then is should we ask the lower grades to teach in Celsius, in metric? The pushback's gonna be, well, when are they going to see that? We don't
That's what
use-
I would
we don't use
say. I would
Celsius.
say, why? Why would you do that?
Because
That's
when they
not
read the
that's
news-
not in their context yet. I mean, if they're watching the weather on their news, they're not gonna
Right.
see it in Celsius unless they're out of the US.
Join me
Every
around
place else in the
right?
world does it that way except us.
But then it's in 5th grade, not just.
But that's a conversation
Oh,
that
it's
you
relative
know,
temperature.
these are the kind, this is a model of the conversations that you need to have with your colleagues. And that's one of the purposes that we have for having this. But it can't go on as long as it's gonna go on with your colleagues, but y'all have to make a decision at some point, just like we do.
Okay.
Okay, so who has the next horizontal alignment? Ready? Somebody else sent it to me besides Ashley. Can y'all put yours up?
The 7th grade?
7th grade.
Supposed to make
Mhm. Y'all wanna take a quick break while they're putting theirs up? Sure.
Doing biology, there was so much.
They did, but yes.